our labour costs. Does that satisfy you? So I refused. Said I couldn't consider it. We were paying the usual rates, and if they didn't like those rates, they could go and work somewhere else. It's a free country, I told them.
It isn't, if you can't go and work somewhere else.
Quite so.
Look, just you keep out of this. You hadn't even started in the works when this happened. So they went on strike. That didn't last long, of course.
Not if it was just after the holidays. They'll all be broke if I know them.
Right, Gerald. They mostly were. And so was the strike after a week or two. Pitiful affair. Well, we let them all come back at the old rates, except the 4 or 5 ringleaders who'd started the trouble. Went down myself and told them to clear out. And this girl, Eva Smith, was one of them. She had had a lot to say, far too much, so she had to go.
You couldn't have done anything else.
He could. He could have kept her on instead of throwing her out. I call it tough luck.
Rubbish. If you don't come down sharply on some of these people, they'd soon be asking for the earth.
I should say so.
They might. But after all, it's better to ask for the earth than to take it.
What did you say your name was?
Gould. Goole.
How do you get on with our Chief Constable, Colonel Roberts?
I don't see much of him.
Well, perhaps I ought to warn you he's an old friend of mine and that I see him fairly frequently. We played golf together up at the West Brumley.
I don't play golf.
No, I didn't suppose you did.
Well, I think it's a damn shame.
No, I've never wanted to play.
No, I mean about this girl, Eva Smith. Why shouldn't they try for higher wages? We tried for the highest possible prices. I don't see why she should have been sacked just because she's a bit more spirit than the others. You said yourself she was a good worker. I'd let her stay.
Unless you brighten your ideas, you'll never be in a position to let anybody stay or to tell anybody to go. It's about time you learned to face a few responsibilities. That's something that this public school and varsity life doesn't seem to teach you.
Well, we don't need to tell the inspector about that, do we?
I don't see we need to tell the inspector anything more. In fact, there's nothing more I can tell him. I told the girl to clear out, and she went. That's the last I heard of her. Have you any idea what happened to her after that? Go on the streets? Get into trouble?
No, she didn't exactly go on the streets.
What's this about streets? We're sorry, I didn't know. Mummy sent me in to ask why you didn't come along to the drawing room.
We shall be along in a minute now, just finishing.
I'm afraid not.
There's nothing else, you know, I've told you that.
What's all this about?
Nothing to do with you, Sheila. Run along.
No, wait a minute, Miss Berlin.
Look here, Inspector. I consider this uncalled for and officious. I've half a mind to report you. I've told you all I know, and it doesn't seem to me to be very important. And now there isn't the slightest reason why my daughter should be dragged into this unpleasant business.
What business? What's happening?
I'm a police inspector, Miss Berling. This afternoon, a young woman drank some disinfectant and died after several hours of agony tonight in the infirmary.
Oh, how horrible! Was it an accident?
No. She wanted to end her life. She felt she couldn't go on any longer.
Well, don't tell me that's because I discharged her from my employment nearly 2 years ago.
That might have started it.
Did you, Dad?
Yes, the girl had been causing trouble in the works. I was quite justified.
Yes, I think you were. I know we'd have done the same thing. Don't look like that, Sheila.
Sorry. It's just that I can't help thinking about this girl, destroying herself so horribly. And I'd been so happy tonight. Oh, I wish you hadn't told me. What was she like? Quite young?
Yes, 24.
Pretty?
She wasn't pretty when I saw her today, but she had been pretty. Very pretty.
That's enough of that.
And I don't really see that this inquiry gets you anywhere, Inspector. It's what happened to her since she left Mr. Burling's work that is important.
Obviously, I suggested that some time ago.
And we can't help you there because we don't know.
Are you sure you don't know?
Are you suggesting now that one of them knows something about this girl?
Yes.
You didn't come here just to see me then?
No.
Well, of course, if I'd known that earlier, I wouldn't have called you officious and talked about reporting. You understand that, don't you, Inspector? I thought that for some reason best known to yourself you were making the most of this tiny bit of information I could give you. I'm sorry. This makes a difference. You sure of your facts?
Some of them, yes.
I can't think they can be of any great consequence.
The girl is dead, though.
What do you mean by saying that? You talk as if we were responsible.
Just a minute, Sheila. Now, Inspector, perhaps you and I had better go and talk this over quietly in a court.
Why should you? He's finished with you. He says it's one of us now.
Yes, and I'm trying to settle it sensibly for you.
Well, there's nothing to settle as far as I'm concerned. I've never known an Eva Smith.
Neither have I.
What was her name? Eva Smith?
Yes.
Never heard it before.
So where are you now, Inspector?
Where I was before, Mr. Croft. I told you that, like a lot of these young women, she'd used more than one name. She was still Eva Smith when she was sacked from Burling and Company for wanting 25 shillings a week instead of 22 and 6. But after that, she stopped being Eva Smith. Perhaps she'd had enough of it.
Can't blame her.
I think that was a mean thing to do. Perhaps that spoilt everything for her.
Rubbish. Do you know what happened to her after she left my works?
Yes, she was out of work for the next 2 months. Both her parents were dead, and so she'd no home to go back to, and she'd hardly been able to save much from what Burling and Company had paid her. So that after those 2 months, with no work, no money coming in, living in lodgings with no relatives to help her, few friends, lonely, half-starved, she was feeling desperate.
I should think so. Rotten shame.
There are a lot of young women living this sort of existence in every city and big town in the country, Miss Burling. If there weren't, then the factories and warehouses wouldn't know where to look for cheap labour. Ask your father.
But these girls aren't cheap labour. They're people.
I've had that notion myself from time to time. In fact, I've thought it would do us all a bit of good. If sometimes we put ourselves in the place of those young women counting their pennies in their dingy little back bedrooms.
Yes, I expect it would. But what happened to her then?
She had what seemed to her a wonderful stroke of luck. She was taken on in a shop. In a good shop too. Millward's.
Millward? We go there. In fact, I was there this afternoon. For your benefit.
Good.
Yes, she was very lucky to have been taken on at Millward's.
That's what she thought. And it happened that at the beginning of December that year, 1910, there was a good deal of influenza about, and Millward's found themselves short-handed. And so that gave her her chance. It seemed she liked working there. It was a nice change from the factory. And she enjoyed being amongst pretty clothes, I've no doubt. She felt she was making a good fresh start. You can imagine how she felt.
Oh, yes, of course.
And then she got herself into trouble there, I suppose.
After about a couple of months, just when she felt she was settling down nicely, they told her she'd have to go.
Not doing her work properly?
No, there was nothing wrong with the way she was doing her work. They admitted that.
Well, there must have been something wrong.
All she knew was that a customer complained about her, and so she had to go.
When was this?
At the end of January last year.
What did this girl look like?
If you come over here, I'll show you.
What's the matter with her?
She recognised it from the photograph, didn't she?
Yes.
Why the devil do you want to go upsetting the child like that?
I didn't do it. She's upsetting herself.
Well, why?
I don't know.
Why?
Yet. That's something I have to find out.
Well, if you don't mind, I'll find out first.
Shall I go to her?
No, leave this to me. I must also have a word with my wife. Tell her what's happening. We're having a nice little family celebration tonight, and a nasty mess you've made of it now, haven't you?
That's more or less what I was thinking tonight in the infirmary when I was looking at the dead girl. A nice promising life there, I thought. And a nasty mess someone's gone and made of it.
I'd like to have a look at that photograph now, Inspector.
All in good time.
I don't see why...
You heard what I said before, Mr. Croft. One line of inquiry at a time. Otherwise we'll all be talking at once, and we won't know where we are. If you've anything to tell me, you'll have a chance of doing it soon.
Well, I don't suppose I have a chance.
Look here! I've had enough of this.
I dare say.
I'm sorry, but you see, we were having a little party and I've had a few drinks, including rather a lot of champagne. And I've got a headache. And as I'm only in the way here, I think I'd better